In 1953, fresh off of 3 years of devastating war, South Korea's GDP per capita was $67, lower than Ghana's, Haiti's, and many other countries that remain undeveloped today. Today, a mere 70 years later, South Korea consistently ranks as one of the 15 largest economies in the world. They're home to massive companies like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG, and the exporter of global phenomenons like K-pop and K-dramas. But what was it that transformed a war-torn peninsula into an economic and cultural powerhouse? The answer lies in two simple words: Pali Pali. While Pali Pali is loosely translated to hurry hurry or chop chop in English, its meaning to Koreans goes far beyond a little bit of impatience. It's a cultural obsession that rebuilt a nation from ashes and continues to dominate everything from your smartphone to the music you stream. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand why Korean life is so fast-paced, but how that pace of life saved and then defined an entire nation. To begin this journey, let's go back to where it all started. In August 1953, the Korean War ended with an armistice. Seoul was destroyed, 3 million people died, and the country's infrastructure was obliterated. And to make matters worse, South Korea has almost no natural resources they could rely on. Just mountains and a population with a desperate urgency to survive. When you're starting from absolute zero, you don't have the luxury of time or the resources to fail slowly. So Korea made a collective decision: do everything faster than everyone. One of the best examples of this came in 1968, when President Park Chung-hee announced the construction of the Gyeonggu Expressway, a 428-kilometer highway connecting Seoul to Busan, Korea's two largest cities. In most countries, a project like this would take 10 to 15 years. Korea built it in 2.5. Workers operated 24 hours a day in rotating shifts, working through monsoons, winter freezes, and everything else Mother Nature could throw at them. President Park would famously visit construction sites and tell workers, "We don't have time to do it slowly. The nation's survival depends on this." When the highway opened in 1970, it became the backbone of Korea's industrial transformation, allowing goods and materials to move at unprecedented speed. And maybe most importantly, this was one of the first massive wins South Korea experienced in their bet on speed. Of course, operating at such a pace has its drawbacks. It can lead to shortcuts and burnout that make entire systems collapse under pressure. So how did Korea avoid this crash? Honestly, they didn't avoid it entirely. There were costs, and we'll get to those later. But what they did successfully was institutionalize Pali Pali into their economic model. The government adopted export-driven policies with aggressive timelines, and companies like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG adopted speed as a strategy, allowing Pali Pali to dig its roots deeper into the Korean soil. Let me add some perspective. In the 1960s, Samsung was selling dried fish and noodles. By the 80s, they were manufacturing semiconductors. And today, they produce nearly 20% of the world's memory chips. That entire transformation happened in just one generation. And that same pattern repeated itself across numerous industries. In the late 90s and early 2000s, Korea's internet infrastructure was built at record speed. While other countries were debating fiber optic cables and broadband policies, Korea didn't hesitate. They just built it, and they built it fast. This period of rapid growth became known as the Miracle on the Han River, named after the river that runs through Seoul. Between 1960 and 1996, South Korea's economy grew at an astonishing average annual rate of 10% per year. For context, the United States considers 3% annual growth healthy. And at the heart of all this growth was Pali Pali, the cultural belief that speed isn't just an advantage, it's survival. So fast forward to today, where South Korea is a wealthy, developed nation with a high standard of living. While some may think this would allow Koreans to pump the brakes on Pali Pali culture, the opposite has happened. In 2025, the pace of Korean life is more extreme than ever. Let's look at food delivery as a simple example. In most countries, 45 minutes to an hour is a normal delivery time. In Korea, where deliveries typically arrive in 15 minutes or less, your delivery app will literally start apologizing if your food takes longer than 30 minutes. And I'm not talking about fast food either. I'm talking about restaurant quality meals that show up at your door faster than you could cook them yourself. And those internet speeds we talked about? Korea averages around 200 megabits per second for standard home internet, 5 times faster than the average rate of 40 in the United States. And of course, the cultural influence of Pali Pali is strong as well. Just look at K-pop, where groups release multiple albums per year and master intricate choreography in weeks. BTS, one of K-pop's most popular groups, has already released more content in their first 7 years than most bands would release in a lifetime. Meanwhile, Korean beauty brands release trend-driven products in weeks, not months. They identify a trend, develop the product, market it, and get it on shelves faster than international competitors can even finish their market research. This is why Korean culture is dominating globally right now. While others are busy planning, Korea is executing. Your Samsung phone, LG appliances, and even the skincare routine you learn from TikTok are all a byproduct of Pali Pali. But for all the good Pali Pali has had on Korean life, it isn't without its drawbacks. One downside of Korea's rapid pace of life is its impact on mental health. South Korea has some of the highest rates of work-related stress in the developed world, and, uncoincidentally, they're also home to one of the lowest birth rates on Earth. Why? Because the breakneck pace of Korean life created a society where young people feel like they're always behind. There's even a term, Hell Joseon, a darkly sarcastic nickname young Koreans use to describe the relentless pressure of modern life. Joseon was Korea's last dynasty, and the term suggests that despite all the economic progress, life still feels restrictive and exhausting. There may be no better example of this than the education system. Korean students study longer hours than almost anyone else on Earth. Because the pressure to get into top universities is so intense, it's normal for hagwons, or private after-school academies, to keep kids studying until 10 or 11 p.m. And the corporate world is no different. Until recently, 80-hour work weeks were expected, and leaving the office before your boss was a sign of disrespect. This has caused terms like Npo generation to emerge, referring to young people who've given up on traditional life milestones like marriage, children, and home ownership, because the pressure is too intense and the costs are too high. Fortunately, there's been a growing movement promoting work-life balance and mental health. Even the Korean government has gotten on board, as a law they imposed in 2018 set a cap of 52 hours on a work week, forcing companies to slow down. Though, as I'm sure you can imagine, enforcing this rule isn't always easy. So while Pali Pali remains the force that built modern Korea, it's also one of its greatest challenges. You can argue whether or not this is a good thing, but it's undeniable that Pali Pali has become both a superpower and a burden. So what can we learn from Pali Pali? Is that speed isn't about sacrificing quality. Instead, Pali Pali is at its best when it's focused on decisiveness and constant iteration. In 1953, South Korea had every reason to fail. Their odds were seemingly insurmountable, and any rational analysis would have predicted decades of poverty and instability. Their impatience didn't just rebuild the country. It created a culture that's reshaping global entertainment, technology, beauty standards, and even how we think about productivity itself. In summary, Pali Pali isn't just speed. is proof that urgency, when channeled correctly, can change the world.